teaches psychology or counseling. But religious teaching, when you talk about religion, religion is about, and I call the scriptures, if it is the Bible, the Quran, the Gita for those who are Hindus, the Torah for those who are Jews, I call it the user's manual. From the manufacturer himself, that is God Almighty. And God who created us understood that human beings would go at times through situations where they lose hope in life, they are frustrated, and they would want to take away their life. So definitely, if this is a user's manual from the Creator himself, definitely there must be something to address this situation. Of course, when it comes to taking away life, whether it is your own life or the life of another person, of course, religion condemns that so much. The Quran is very clear. Whoever takes away a life is like you've taken away the whole of humanity. So actually it's deterrent. It deters. But let us come to the realities in life. Even these young people, Al-Shabaab, they are committing suicide. They blow themselves. And the question that we should ask ourselves in this world, because we are talking about should a person who has attempted suicide be considered as a criminal? I look at the scriptures, I look at my holy book, the Quran, there is nothing like that. But there is a punishment in the hereafter that life is a gift from God. Don't take it away until your time comes. But now if we find out that somebody has attempted it, and let us be realistic, it is happening every day in our communities. Unfortunately, very few religious leaders would want to talk about it. My approach is that religion is not just about going to heaven, there, huko. That's why people are going to Shakahola. Religion is about how we live in this world. So we should be able to address what is it that would push a person who seems to be full of potential, full of life. I am 60 plus, but I still want to live. And somebody who is 80, they still want to live. So the question we should ask ourselves is this: 24-year-old, whatever age, still full of potential, why do they want to take away their life? So what does religion talk about that? Look at the underlying root causes, because it must be so powerful, so strong. Everybody wants to live. That's why we locked our doors at night, put a watchman there, watch dogs. It's because we want to live. So what is it that is making this person want to end their lives? So the religion here talks about how to prevent that.
Yeah.
First of all, trust in God Almighty. Tie your camel and trust in God. Do what it is that is humanly possible, then trust in God. But if you do not get what you had planned to get, religion teaches you to accept the decree from God and accept that this is the will of God. And that's why, for a Muslim, no matter what calamity befalls you, if you come and tell me this has befallen me, I'll tell you, and death of course is the worst thing, I'll tell you, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To God we come, and to God we belong, and to God we shall all go back. And for me, that is a therapy. Accept the will of God. Again, why do we get frustrated in life? Sometimes it is because of the situations that we face, and also the way other human beings relate with us. So what does religion tell us about helping other people? Actually, yesterday I was just looking at a teaching of the Prophet, may peace be upon him. He said, the best of human beings in the eyes of God is the one who is helpful to other people. So we need to help one another. And I know this is also a Christian teaching. None of you is a believer until you love for others what you love for yourself. For this person who is so frustrated in life, or whatever reason, they want to commit suicide, religion has nothing but sympathy and understanding and extending a hand of help to this person. Maybe I'll have another chance to continue, but please, I think religion has an answer to this problem, because religion is from the author himself. The Japanese know the Proverbs better than all of us because they manufactured it. God knows us better than anybody else because he created us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Indeed, we shall come back to you. I want us to go straight to Mary. Sheikh Lathome had mentioned that there are underlying factors to all this. Now, when I did ask our audience to raise their hands in the event anyone had tried to take their life earlier on, you saw the hands that are raised. Some very bravely, others shy. How do you know someone is suicidal? Are there any, signs and symptoms of pregnancy, signs and symptoms of malaria? How do you know when someone is suicidal?
Thank you so much, Helen. Good afternoon. So I think while we're seated here, a couple of years ago, I was working somewhere in a HR department. And there was a very, young man full of life. He wanted to grow. He wanted to advance in his career. And all of a sudden, everything about him changed. He would come late to work, unkept, started abusing substance, kind of becoming arrogant even to his colleagues. And one day when I was sitting on my desk early in the morning, my boss came and just said, "Gitao, why are you keeping this man here?" And true to it, he actually stood behind me. I typed this letter, we printed, I signed, my boss signed. I put the letter in the envelope and I went and gave it to this young man. And he didn't have a job. Of course, he went home. And 3 weeks later, he died by suicide. And the question is, what were we doing wrong, us, in the organization that drove him to suicide? We only took what his safety net was. But the real issue was at home. He was being abused by the spouse. Masculinity issues. Is a man going to come and say, "My wife is abusing me in the house, and now the only thing he has, his job, has been taken away"? For me, that was an indicator I needed to do something going forward. How can I tell when somebody is struggling and is in pain and is hurt and wants to end his life? And so do we have any particular warning sign that someone is actually struggling? It could be this person could come from the best to the worst, or from the worst to the best. It could be even how they're dressing. Simple things that we may even miss to see in our workplace. And as my colleague said, Petronila, it doesn't have to even be very specific. It could be something that even happened. They have lost touch with themselves, so they do not even care anymore how they dress. They have lost touch with the world, they are hurt. They probably even knew their timings for prayer. Now they can no longer pray. They knew how to respond to their colleagues. They can no longer be able to do that because of the pain they are experiencing. So do we have a warning sign? Yes. But do we have to only focus on what is written on the books? No. We just need to watch and observe. And ask the person, when you notice something is totally different from them, "I noticed lately something about you has changed. I notice when you come and sit on your desk, you're always on your phone." Those of us who report to work at 6 a.m. and leave at 9 p.m., every single day, 365 days in a year. What are we running away from? Those of us who never go for lunch anymore, why are we avoiding lunch? So it could be small things like that one. But do we pause as a community and ask, where does it hurt? And how can I help you? It has to start where we are with the small things that we are actually noticing, and we can observe with our colleagues, with our family members, with our children, with our spouses, with our parents, with our siblings. What's different? Thank you, Helen.
Thank you for that. Over to you, Hiram, as a suicidologist and a researcher. Oftentimes when someone dies by suicide, the family is left stigmatized, ostracized even by the community. Unasikia community inaanza kusema, wale walijiua. You know, many communities often just speak however they want, the desensitization that's there as well in the community. Now, I'd like you to break down to us, before someone even attempts to die by suicide, what goes on in their mind? Do they think about, I have a mother, I have a father, I have siblings, I have people who love me, or what happens at that time for them to say, I'm done?
Thank you for that question. Well, before you this individual who is transitioning from having suicidal ideation towards transitioning to actually seriously considering taking their lives to actually acquiring the means to take their lives, sometimes it differs from person to person. Of course, there are people who might have ideation. Actually, a lot of people, I'm sure quite a number of us have had suicidal ideation, even though we might not want to admit. At least in our lifetimes, we may have thought about dying at some point, or have experienced frustrations of life. But to a person who has other predisposing factors, for instance, they have depression, for instance, they do not have a supportive family structure around them, they have crisis. For instance, right now we are in the age of crisis. Someone said somewhere that we have all these wars going around in Kenya as well, hakuna pesa, and all these many things happening. So these are multiple issues happening to this person's life. And by the time they degrade towards actually acquiring the means, and the means could be many. The most common means for men use more crude means, for instance, hanging and firearms. Women, on the other hand, use less lethal means, for instance, poisoning, and I don't want to list all of them, but for obvious reasons. But men actually ideate suicide, and they move very fast towards the attempt more than women. But women, of course, will attempt. But when men attempt, oftentimes it is lethal, because oftentimes men do not perhaps have a speak about their problems, and of course it's an issue. And by the way, did you know that more men take their lives by suicide? Yes, I don't know how many men are here in this conversation today, but from the look of things, perhaps the hair, I can tell wanaume tuko kidogo in this mental health conversation. So for every about 5 men who die by suicide, it's 1 woman who takes their lives by suicide. So there are a list of protective factors that mitigate whether a person will take their lives. Like Sheikh has said here, religion plays a very, very crucial role in mitigating suicide. Because the question oftentimes is, what is suicide? What goes on in the mind of a person? Why would you take your life, And those of us who have been bereaved by suicide can attest that oftentimes the first question people ask is, "Sasa mbona alijiua?" Why would they think of such a thing? And the grief that happens by suicide is complicated grief. There are types of grief. The grief by suicide is very complicated. You do not know how to process. Oftentimes, sometimes you're met by surprise that this person has taken their lives. And so, and of course, people who have been affected, grieved by suicide also still, especially if that happens at a younger age, they also very likely also develop suicidal ideation at some point in their lives. It's not predictive, but automatic rather, but there's also, it's a high risk factor. So there's also the philosophical side of suicide as well, because when you think about suicide, we think about suicide as something that is happening in the person, as something that happens in the person, not as something that happens to the person. And what do I mean by this? We think about suicide as something that a person does, or an illness that is inside them, or a pathology. You think of it in a pathological way, but we hardly consider the external factors that actually most likely predict suicide. Because suicide always, like I mentioned, always happens in a cultural context. No suicide happens outside any cultural context. So even the interventions that we have oftentimes are towards the individual. So let's fix you, there's something wrong with you. But we don't ask ourselves, what happens around this person? Because by the time the person goes to that level of actually making their first attempt, they have been perhaps not even had a support system. they have not had access to any level of medication, for instance, if they have a history of disorders, mental disorders. They have been ostracized, for instance. And of course, in times of crisis predict suicide a lot of times. And so we have to also think about, so that we have more empathy to people who actually attempt suicide, and even who die by suicide, or even those who have been bereaved by suicide. We have to consider the context around them, you know. Do they have community around them? So even as I attempt to answer that question, what goes on in the suicidal mind? We have to consider all those factors. There is the psychology of the person, the upbringing, adverse ACEs, adverse childhood experiences at an early age significantly contribute to the person might be suicidal. There is also suicide that happens that sometimes is met by surprise, sometimes could be situational, you know. And the conversation, of course, around today is suicide prevention. We are saying that suicide is preventable. So it doesn't mean that when you are suicidal or you had suicidal thought, that is a death trap for you. At some point, that, of course, can be with just a bit of interventions. Actually, people who have intervention actually get out from that phase of having those ideations of suicide. So I wouldn't directly say that the person who is suicidal or having suicidal thoughts, there's something very technical about it. It's complex. There are all these many factors that drive a person or mediate that process, whether they complete the suicide or not. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll come back. I have a question actually on that, but I'll come back to you. My next question would be to Sheikh Lethome. Hiram has mentioned that suicide occurs within the cultural context. Now, over my few years of interviewing the younger generation, mostly when it comes to cases of mental health, some would say they don't believe in God. Some would say they don't believe, if God did exist, God would not allow whatever it is that they're going through to happen to them. If those ones who are abused often say, you're telling me about God, but why was I abused when I was younger? Why did he allow this to happen? What would you tell that younger person? Oftentimes, the younger generation.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And this is the reality that we have to face in society today. And let me begin by picking on what Hiram said here. I think religion is very important in guiding us when we are talking about this question of suicide. Number one, for a person who believes in God, let me speak for the religions that I know, Christianity, Islam, maybe Hinduism, Judaism. We know that life does not end with death. Death is just a transition to another life. And that's why in Christianity, I attend burials in Central Province, and they say, Igoro kwanjeso netoga shemania okuo, as you are bidding this person farewell. In Islam, we are told, amekwenda kwa Mwenyezi Mungu, Mwenyezi Mungu amweke mahali pema peponi. Meaning, religion tells us that it doesn't end with death, because I'm trying to get into the mind of this suicidal person. It's that I want to end my suffering by bringing this to an end. I die and that is over. Religion tells you, no, it doesn't end here. You're going somewhere else and there are consequences for what you're doing. But now that will only make sense for a person who recognizes there is God.
Yeah.
So it becomes difficult if this person does not believe that there is God. For me, the fundamental problem then is, what kind of upbringing are we giving to our children? What kind of exposure are we giving them when it comes to life and the place of God, the place of religion in our lives? And that question people ask. You go through a tragedy, sometimes a very bad one. You ask, where is this merciful God? Because the God of Christianity, the God of Islam, they are very merciful. Where were they when this happened to me? So a person can easily say, I want to believe that God is not there. But again, and I want now to talk so that I can speak authoritatively from an Islamic point of view. Yes, calamities befall a person. Is it because God is not there? And I want us to begin with people who are more beloved, at least what I believe, and closer to God than me and you. Take, for example, in Christianity, Jesus Christ, the son of Mary, call him son of God in Christianity. Was he not a beloved person to God? But look at what he went through. Somebody can say, where was God? When his messenger, according to Islam, according to Christianity, his only begotten son was going through all through this. Was God not there? The answer that we need to give to our children is that this world is a world of trials, a world of difficulties in this world, because we have that eternal life. This is not the end of life. This is not the eternal life. So you go through tribulations. Even those who are most beloved, and I will take, for example, for Muslims, I give this story, the story of Joseph. We call him in the Quran Yusuf. Yusuf was persecuted by his own brothers. They conspired to kill him. They ended up putting him in a well. He ended up being a slave, ended up in prison. Where was God when Joseph, son of Jacob, was going all through this? And the answer is that in this world, you go through trials, but you should be patient. And out of a bad situation, something good might come up. And these stories, I believe, in the Bible, in the Quran, these are not just stories that we tell children as lullabies for them to make them sleep. They are stories from which we need to get lessons. From the story of Muhammad, peace be upon him, he had 7 children. He buried 6 of his children. Only 1 child survived him, that is Fatima. He buried them, one after the other. They died. You would say, where was God? And this is his beloved messenger. So I think we need to begin from the foundation. Teach children about religion and about God and the way God does his things. It's not because God does not love you, God is not there. Or sometimes I've heard people saying, inaonekana shetani ana nguvu kuliko Mwenyezi Mungu. Again, wrong. So we need to start from the foundation. Now, how do we arrest the situation now? For those who believe, and I've met them even within my community, the Muslim community, they are there. Kweni Mungu yuko wapi? I don't want even to believe those stories. Now, we need to bring them close and first of all, help them overcome the problems. This is the other thing that, and I think here, most religious leaders, the clergy, I think we've gotten it wrong. Somebody is facing a real problem, a real practical problem, like what you just said, lost their job, they have been battered by their wives. And of course, can you imagine me going to report that I was battered by my wife? Ngumu hiyo sana. So, we need to address the real problems facing that person. If it is a problem that needs help, financial help, helping this person pick up the bits and pieces of their lives. Religion should not just be, in heaven you'll go to a good place, you go to a good place. I want to have that good life here before there. So this is where we need to begin. Again, this is a topic that many clergy shun away from. We don't like talking about it. Sometimes we even look at it, huyu amelaniwa na Mwenyezi Mungu. This is a cursed person. I think we need to move away from there. So where do we begin? We begin by sensitizing parents and religious leaders and those who are in direct contact with these people, young people as they grow up. Nurture them in such a way that they know the place of God, and when bad things happen to them in this world, how do they understand them after understanding that God is able, God is always there, and that this life here is a life of trials, the eternal life where we shall have all those beautiful things that have been described in the Bible and in the Quran is elsewhere. So for me, this is where we need to begin. Can we begin by sensitizing the religious leaders? Can we begin by, in a forum like this, bringing religious leaders also as strategic partners in this? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We'll get back to you. But before then, Petronella, as the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, we are very keen, let me not say we, let me say you. As an organization, you are very keen on ensuring human beings are not against discriminatory practices. And with the decriminalization of death by suicide is indeed one of the practices that you're against. do you believe that if Kenya was to ensure that there's no more decriminalization of suicide, the numbers would go down?
Thank you, Helen. A very good question. And I'll pick it up from also an earlier question you asked. Why are we where we are in terms of still maintaining criminalization of attempted suicide in our penal code? Besides blaming it on our colonial, masters, I would actually just simply add that a lack of information, ignorance about the causes of suicide across families and across communities, and as Sheikh mentioned, religious leaders, is one of the and even our policymakers, parliamentarians, probably a low understanding on the why is a major problem. And before I go straight to your question, is that just to mention, actually some of the cases we've received as a commission in terms of intervening in cases of attempted suicide, in places of detention, people have been arrested. You find it's actually family members, some who, just say, weka yeye ndani, put them inside to learn a lesson, teach them, ulitaka kujiua, okay, shika kamba, mshika yeye, but I think if that family member, if that spouse, if that parent, the community member, if our people understood then what surrounds a person when they are having that suicidal ideation, as discussed by my colleague, then probably our approach would be different in terms of offering more compassion and support. Number two, which now comes nearer to responding to your question, is actually the misconception, again related to lack of proper information, that says that decriminalization, maintaining attempted suicide in our statute books actually deters people from attempting to take their lives. Now that is contrary to what has been established. Just going through also another WHO note regarding actually research that has been made across 171 countries that actually shows the opposite is actually true, that when people do not then have to fear of the legal consequences, that in the first place in itself is a preventive measure, because then you create a space where people can talk, you destigmatize the whole issue, and that then helps. The other thing, and that is one of the things we were pushing, is also because of this criminalization, then in terms of even obtaining data, if you ask, Kenya, we are very scanty. If you look at the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Economic Survey, they put data there, police criminal reports, they put data there, but very scanty. It's not representative. Why? Because people who is happy to report that to indicate the cause of death as, suicide. No one will do that. So what happens then is that we may even get less data, thinking that, or more data, thinking that now it's because we have decriminalized. But what actually has happened, you've encouraged people to come out and report. You've encouraged our healthcare professionals to be able to have the correct cause of death in the report, so that we don't do approximate causes of death, So I just want to demystify that myth, because it's not supported. In fact, the contrary is the case. So do we believe then that if 226 was struck out today, so tomorrow, the things are better? No. We are very clear that there has to be a post-decriminalization program that then targets, that shifts the focus now. Yes, we've created the policy legal environment. Let's now shift to addressing, working with stakeholders, working in terms of communities, sensitization. And now once you decriminalize now, you have open space. People can talk. there isn't fear. Government is happy to put in, people are happy to put in resources because you are not fearing if I go this way, I'm committing a crime by accommodating these. Insurance companies are not going to fear, you know, having those exclusionary clauses that self-harm will not be covered. You know, they'll come out and we'll have this conversation. So DCRIM, we see it as creating, as opening, shifting then the focus to other now very important interventions, conversations, education and training of our healthcare professionals, peer support groups, first responders, our law enforcement officers, judicial officers, our schools. We are able then to, and then you are able to get data properly. And what that does is then that as governments, as county governments, and because as the Honorable PS mentioned earlier, county governments have a big role to play under the Mental Health Amendment Act in terms of this sensitization. What then happens is that then we are able to be able to see active programs and openness and being able to have proper data that can help us have specific interventions, not guesswork, but actually targeting based on the data we are getting. But as it is, we just cut around. It's guesswork as to what where we should be running to in the first place. As I finish there, maybe because I may not have another opportunity, is to just mention, of course, we have there is the DCRIM, the petition 045 of 2022 in the Constitution and Human Rights Division, that as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, working together with Madam Charity Muturi here, as well as the Kenya Psychiatrists Association, that was filed, challenging the constitutionality of this. We expect the judgment later in November. But also because of the sub judice rule, then I would be careful not to want to discuss the deeper merits. Yeah. But basically what we are saying here, the points we are raising here, form the crux, the arguments around that case. Lastly, because you mentioned Shakahola, Helen, and I didn't get to mention, just again, understanding, because the commission was very key in terms of advocating for psychosocial support and discussing with DPP so that, trying not to charge the persons with attempted suicide. It's also about, you can imagine what pushes. Remember, we had, by the time as a commission, we had documented October 2023, we had over 425 deaths, over 90 survivors and 25 children. So can you imagine what goes through the mind of a mother, of a father, to carry their children several kilometers to go into a forest and stay? Do you want to punish that? Is that the solution, That radicalization, what is the state of mind? And how helpful is it actually in facing this person with additional criminal sanctions? And just to mention that actually 226, again, has been used more as a threat. Tutakucharge na hii, we will charge you with this. So sometimes it has just been misused abused in the criminal procedure to actually get people to conform in a certain way or otherwise, which is not helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Petronila. Thank you, my panelists. Charity, welcome on board. But I'll revert back to the audience just to pick a question or two to our panelists. Oh, wow. All right. And we can have the microphone down and up as well. We'll start with you, sir. Prof. Okay.
It's working now. The question that I'm going to ask is directed to the first three speakers, and one of them can respond. What you have told us, which somehow she called guesswork, I think that was a very strong term. Let me ask you, what you have told us how much of it is informed by scientific evidence of research done here in Kenya? And for you, there's a lot of research done here in Kenya. I think the question is that we don't access that data. Now, Sheikh, I think all of us here should listen to that Sheikh. We should listen to him. And let me say also, as a scientific fact, there's a lot of research being done on the relation between religion or spirituality and mental illness, including suicidality. It's been done in a big department at Duke University in North Carolina and some other universities all over. And they have demonstrated most clearly that there is a relationship, and that this relationship is not just counseling. There are certain chemical changes depending on the religiosity and what you believe in a higher being, that there's somebody there who can help. Very much like when we do counseling, you try to boost their resilience. It works very well, supported by biological data. Listen to that, man. Thank you.
All right. Before you answer, let's take one more question. There are two ladies who are over that bench, quite pressed, Zainab.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. My name is Margaret Mwikali Keia, in brackets, Koti. Now, mine is not a question. I want to give a personal experience. And I think when I give you this personal experience, all of you, you will feel me, you will understand. And thank you, Professor Ndete, for mentioning the Sheikh. Listen, it's just a brief. I was employed by breweries when I was 19 years old. I worked for breweries. In the process, after 3 years, I got married. I was employed as an accounts clerk. When I got married, we got married to somebody then, it was Kenya, it was customs then. We got 3 children. Cut the long story short, after I left breweries, I was thrown out by my mother, by my ex-husband. And yet I had 3 children. Imagine, you are up there, all of a sudden, you are just, in fact, I used to say that chokoras are better, that they know where they can get food, where they can get sleep, and where they can get feed for their children, or even for themselves. Imagine yourself, you're in that state. What should you do? God is good. I never suffered from any mental illness. Then, that is 24 years back. Are we together? I want to support the Kragi. What happened when I was thrown out with my mother? The first thing, because I was brought up by a Christian family, teach your children the way of the Lord. When they grow up, they will never do what?
Depart.
It will never depart. It doesn't matter. Absolutely. These days, our own children, they have turned to queer and that kind of a thing. But that child will remember and say, after all, is that the way I was brought by my parent? No. Put yourself into the ditch. Nishauriya? After all, you're an adult, isn't it? What am I trying to say? It was a tough situation. But because I had some little bit of some education, I had to start life from scratch. I remember at one point, I even went to a house somewhere in Mabati, and my children were in school in Riara. Thank you so much to Mutava Musimi's, Nyambura Mutava Musimi's wife. I went to church, Baptist church, Pastor Gishinga, Pastor Mwalua. They are the ones who helped me. From there, I got my support. Today, I'm a professional, a good job. My children are all adults, and now they are looking for me. They were even told they should never come to me after I got the custody. They were brainwashed completely. They could not realize that I was the mother. So what am I trying to tell you? Indeed, you can get, there's no need why you should suffer from mental health, because you can get help. Indeed, church, religion, whichever, is the nearest place where you can get hope. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Hi, my name is Sakina Taki. I'm an accredited suicide first aid tutor. My question would be to Petronilla and Mary. What kind of trainings or interventions do we have currently for our peer-to-peer counselors or mentors who go into communities and corporates to talk about suicide? We know that language is an issue. We don't use words like commit. But what kind of trainings is given to people, both therapists and non-therapists, to be able to address suicide in the correct way? Thank you.
Now that I have it, I can go first. My name is Collins Yamkoa. I do work with young people in the community on a mental health program. And I'll first start with the statement. To those of you who are always on social media, there's this young man who was trending after the EPL games who committed suicide, that his team failed to win the trophy. And you come to realize that most young people don't have that environment to express their feelings. And also sometimes they get pressures from their parents, whereby you find the parents tell you, somesha, you have finished school, you can now move out, but you don't have a job, you don't have what to do. And also those who have been affected with the floods, you find that they don't have where to go to stay. So the only way they can, maybe they decide now, they start having those suicidal thoughts. So my question is, if a young person come to you or send you a text, I want to commit suicide, what kind of help can you give?
Thank you. Okay. My name is Evans Wagoro. I want to ask a question to the sociologist. He said he's sociologist. Okay. I have been working with young people for many years. I have a program called Ramoth Wellness Institute. We do sensitization on mental health in many high schools, like every week. And then when you come in touch with these young people who have attempted or are having the thoughts of committing suicide, they have always said that they wanted to do it to punish those who subjected them or treated them unfairly. So sometimes those who want to commit suicide, according to what I have experienced on the ground, they don't do it thinking that they want to end their lives. They are thinking we want to do it to punish those who are mistreating us. I don't know if that is true to you also. And then just something that I want to say, because I am a person who has survived. I survived suicide, and my case was worse. Sometimes there is a lot of misrepresentation of facts. People talk from Googled stuff, and this is a very real area, and I think that is why everybody is saying we need to listen to the Sheikh. I heard Prof. Atwoli speaking in the morning, and he said that we need evidence-based approach when we are dealing with these issues, mental health, because sometimes when you carry out sensitization exercise on suicide and you think that you have succeeded, then later on you realize that cases begin erupting. So we really need to be real, and we need to be very compassionate and see that when we go out, even in the audience that you're addressing, you may be talking to people that are thinking about suicide. That is my input. Finally, there is a program that we run without my institute. We go to churches, we are training, we do workshops. It's called Fakoko Workshop, Family Communications in the Communities. And we are trying to sensitize parents to be there for their children. We are saying that whichever community you come from in Kenya, we agree that every child begins to walk by this ta, ta, ta. So that T, we say touch. Then the first A is affirm. Then the third A is be available. So touch your children, affirm them, and be available to them. Thank you.
Zainab, I can see we have a few more hands.
What Evans failed to tell you is that he has come all the way from Migori to share his story.
Oh, welcome, Evans. Should I, Zainab, before you proceed with that question, should I allow the panelists to answer this first round of questions? Then we can proceed back to the audience. Thank you. We will start the first question. We can go with Mary. You can pick it up.
I'm not so sure I got Professor Ndete's question, so kindly you will repeat for me the question. Let me respond to that and then you ask.
Sorry. I'll just repeat what that gentleman there said. All those recommendations and suggestions you have made, what is the scientific evidence? As simple as that.
Okay. Especially working with the young people, what we know about even trust, especially with an adult. When we build trust with an adult, then we know that the young people will trust the adult, and they can be able to tell them, where does it pain? Where does it hurt? Because at times, and it has been done, I think it's in California, or I'll just need to confirm the details, where exactly. Because I know what the researchers found is that when there's a connection, because suicide prevention will not happen where there's no social justice. There must be social justice for effective suicide prevention to happen, because all these things that are happening, the systemic way of how we're doing things and dealing with things has to change. When we think about our economy, when we think about even how we are connected with each other, we must be able to connect with each other, build trust with each other, and get to a place where we're able to ask very specific questions to this person who is struggling. Whether they're struggling with mental illness, whether they're struggling with mental health, for as long as they're in a position to be able to respond, just getting to their level and asking them, where is it that I can be able to offer help? To the question about trainings, there are very specific trainings that are offered for different professionals. We are partnering with different universities to even offer very key specific trainings with the nurses on how they can be able to respond to a client or a patient that walks into a hospital and presents suicide ideation. We have partnered with other organizations that provide gatekeeper trainings, suicide first aid trainings. So there are a couple of different specific trainings for different professionals that are being offered and that are available for very specific people. Petronilla.
Thank you. Petronilla, you can take up the question from the lady as well.
Okay, yes, I'll do that, but maybe I can also mention something with regard to Prof. Ndete. So now, scientific evidence, so most of the researches, of course, they have been done and, okay, internationally, which then show actually majority of the cases of attempted suicide and suicide is actually related to, mental illness, and it's there. Now, in terms of, and I think earlier in the first session, actually Prof. Lukoya mentioned about also ongoing researches that are going on. Now, when, in terms of the cases, especially when we were doing when we were pursuing this DCRIM case, data is there. I mean, you have partners, for instance, the Kenya Psychiatric Association. We have lived experiences who actually, provide and actually back up, evidence-based to actually give the statistics in terms of what experiences they are facing in terms of the in the health facilities, so that it's not idle. But just to mention then that one of the things that the Suicide Prevention Strategy 2021-2026 seeks to do is actually to make national research one of the key strategies. And that is one of the things we need to embrace so that then we can come up with more, quote, quote, indigenous, researches that address our local context. In terms of trainings, there have been various efforts. as a commission, we have been, training various professionals, but I must say most of our focus, especially, has been with the judicial officers with regard to especially human rights-based approach, to healthcare and criminal justice, especially for persons with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities. We have also been partnering in terms of the WHO, and Charity mentioned, and maybe you can add on that, there's already that rolled out program that seeks to actually sensitize also just everyone, not just mental health professionals, in terms of the human rights-based approach to mental health care in our facilities and across. And I'm also aware that we have a community-based handbook, and other materials that have actually been, published also through the Ministry of Health to support the training and the peer support groups in terms of even rolling out this program. More needs to be done. More needs to be done. We are still just beginning, but there is a lot more that needs to be made towards that.
Thank you, Petronilla. Hiram, there was a question for you from the gentleman.
Thank you. The question was that there's an individual who attempted suicide, and when they were asked, they mentioned that they were trying to punish some other people. Well, like I mentioned, suicide is multifaceted. It's a complex phenomenon, first of all. And the reasons for someone taking their lives we should not miss is that someone is actually attempting to take their lives. That should be the focus. According to you, may be genuine. Sometimes parents come and tell us, wachana huyo anajifanya, is trying to get attention. But indeed, if they are trying to get attention, why are you not giving them that attention? Because it's a cry for help. Suicide is a cry for help. When someone is feeling suicidal, they are crying out for someone to listen to them, for someone to show them sympathy and empathy. And so I would not care whether they have genuine reasons or good reasons that are enough. The whole point is life is important, and if you can do something to safeguard and protect that life, then I think that is what matters more. So, because they could be varied. There are a lot of myths surrounding suicide, but I mean, as you mentioned, when you have gone through it yourself, when you have struggled through, then you know it's a different scenario altogether, And so that is what I would say regarding whether it is a call for attention, whether they are angry towards something. There's a reason that is pushing them, and that reason needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sheikh Lethome, there was also several round of applauses for you from the audience, and just something to add on to it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you, Professor, for the emphasis on the role of religion. Let me say this. Of course, we can talk about scientific research and scientific answers to some questions, but we know that there is a limitation to what science can do, and that is where religion comes in. For example, if we were to ask science, what is the purpose of life? I think we'll not get an answer. Is there life after death? There will be no answer. That is where now religion comes in. So my emphasis as a religious leader would be this. I think, first and foremost, each one of us should know what is the purpose of life. And that can only be answered by you going back to your religious teachings, go to the Bible, go to the Quran, and you'll know the purpose of life. But then, can religion work in isolation? The answer is no. Because if I look at religion itself, it points out to partnerships. To answer problems or to be able to address problems facing humanity, religion tells me God Almighty, in His wisdom, divine wisdom, has given some people knowledge that can help His people. I believe psychologists, psychiatrists, these are people who God have endowed with the knowledge that they can help their people. So what we need here is partnerships. Let religion play its role, and for me, that is the ultimate role. But religion tells me Ask those who know if you know not. Today, as a religious leader, I will advise the people in my mosque, God has commanded you to fast in the month of Ramadan. But somebody within the congregation tells me, my health does not allow me to fast. I'll tell them, consult a medical doctor. If the doctor tells you it is harmful for you not to fast, I, as a religious leader, has nothing to do with that. Let the doctor speak here. So what we need here is strategic partnerships. Who do we need on board? We need the religious leaders because there is that role about the purpose of life and giving hope where people think there is no hope and telling people there is life after death. We need the counseling psychologists, we need the medics. We need policy makers. We need the legislature. We need the media like you people to highlight this, not only politics. And I want to congratulate NTV for highlighting this. So we need strategic partnerships to deal with this problem. And let me speak again. As religious leaders, I think we need also to be sensitized of our role in this, because unfortunately, maybe it's because of our training, straight-jacketed, religion is just about going there. That is why people are convinced to go to Shakahola, because they thought that is the shortcut to heaven. That is why Al-Shabaab are blowing themselves, because somebody has misused the religion to show them there is a better life there. So go to heaven perpendicularly. So we need partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Charity, you'll take the last question. And you can just add on, you were not with us, just in brief, just add on something before we wrap up, because time is not on our side.
Kindly repeat the question.
So there were several questions about training of decriminalization of suicide, and I do understand actually you are one of the front line of ensuring that Kenya gets to a point of suicide decriminalization.
Yes.
So Mary did answer that. Petronila also answered that. Maybe if you have something to add on that, that would be great. And the last one was, I can take from the gentleman, was signs. It was more of signs and symptoms of someone who's trying to commit suicide and trying to punish the people around them, and the role of religion as well.
All right, thank you. Sorry I was late. I had a meeting that will help us to push this agenda. I think to add to the question of Professor Ndete's question is that there were psychological autopsies done on people who've died by suicide to determine whether for sure it was due to, psychological trauma, or was there any mental health issue. And 99% of them were yes. So that's what I would say in terms of biology. But I'm sure Dr. Chitaiv is here, can add to that. I think the question from Collins is also very good in terms of what should you do. I'll allow Mary to answer that one. She answers it well. But it is to show that even when we provide support, it should not only be to the people who are affected directly, like to the person who is considering suicide, but also to the families. Collins should be able to call a hotline and ask, this person has said this on radio, what should I do? Because many times you're willing to help, but it's possible to cause harm while you're trying to help, isn't it? I think in terms of adding, I know I had touched on suicide a bit when I was speaking, and I said, I couldn't talk about my suicidal thoughts and plans for 24 years because my father is a religious leader. But then when I got into treatment, and I loved my doctor. By the way, we get a very interesting attachment to our psychiatrists. I don't even think gynecologists, we get that involved, because this is someone who picks you up in your vulnerability when you're doubting your identity. And so I trusted her fully. But for 3 years, I could not tell her. She used to, by any chance, she could tell. But you never had suicide? No. Because I was like, I don't know whether these are plainclothes policemen waiting to come and take data, because now I had learned that, there's a crime involved. Actually, I'd been told talking about it. So I think people don't realize how much it pushes us into silence. You understand? Yeah. It pushes us into silence. And so, and part of what pushed me into silence is the small comments people make, whether it is on radio or it's in the matatu. You know, I pick that and I know, I should not talk about this. So I think what I would want to add is to say that, you know, we have worked with Sheikh Lithome, and I reached out to 25 religious leaders, you know, to do a season of religion and mental health, and we started with NTV, but only 4 said yes. And the one thing that was common with the 4 is that they had buried congregants to suicide. So the other thing is to remember, even as you're calling religious leaders, do not come from a place of entitlement that everyone will be like Sheikh Lithome. And that's why he's talking about empowering religious leaders. I get impatient, and I know Petronilla knows this, I get so impatient about advocacy because I know this is an issue that takes time. How many times have we been told, don't say commit suicide? But you end up saying it. Why? It takes time. You understand? And so, don't think that, we can do advocacy for 1 year after that, and now people are like, this is something people feel very deeply. I have religious leaders that I respect, and I tried to use everything, you know, as a religious scholar. He told me, and I talked to many people, but they were like, I don't want my name around such issues, you know. So it is to understand that this is a very moral issue that people are very sensitive about. And even the people around you begin just having those conversations. Otherwise, I think people would be shocked when politicians start talking about suicide. You understand? So my concern is that we seem very entitled, that this is our right, that we have the commission. It doesn't mean that the person who you share a house with thinks the same thing that you do. If I was with a nurse as a mother, a bishop as a father, and I still planned for suicide many times without their knowledge, then it is possible that you're a suicidologist and your wife. You understand? So we need to talk about it and stop being entitled. I think the other thing is, even when we have, the National Suicide Prevention Strategy Committee did a good job. The strategy is available online. Please look at it. It has great recommendations. One of the recommendations was to form a committee. Actually, last week, 2 weeks ago, we had our mid-year, the mid-term sort of meeting out of the 5 years. And part of that meeting was getting statistics from morgues, from police stations, from ETC. However, when I did not want to be a petitioner, I wanted to work with someone who has been through the criminal justice system. I went to many police stations, prisons, morgues. I talked to so many people, but the majority, I couldn't get someone willing to speak, 1, because of stigma, 2, if they did go through the criminal justice system, they don't even know their name, because they got worse. And so, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. It is to say that, yes, so there were some interesting conversations there. I remember there's a regional commander that gave me access to all his OCPDs. And he told me, I am sending you to my OCPDs so that you can hear what I'm telling you is real. What you're doing is foolish. How can you decriminalize? We are helping to save lives. So I'll give you this letter. Go to all OCPDs because I'm sure they'll support my message. Right. And there are some I would go to and they're asking, you want records of attempted? Why would you want records of attempted? Hizi zote ni za completed. Attempted ni ya nini, uko na haja gani na attempted? That is the reality. So I think we, especially in the mental health space, need to burst our bubble, fold your sleeves, know that this is war, and do not sit and expect that the way you are convinced is the way that someone else. Religion is important. That is true. Yeah. However, it is very important to listen to someone, because it could even be a religious leader, and they are during that night of the dark soul period. And the last thing they need to hear is religion. And we need to have space. Hiram, the suicidologist, has supported me so much. And even after I said I had suicidal thoughts, I would go to psychologists, and then they tell me how I should think of how I should think of suicide. I would tell them, I have fought, like now to be, are we live? Are we live?
No.
Okay.
We are? We are.
Oh,
yes,
also,
yes,
okay,
we are.
all right, for another time. Yeah, you know, in the last one, my niece asked my auntie, my sister, what is suicide? So now I try. And so I was saying that for me, I struggle with altruistic suicidal thoughts that are attached to altruism. So like now I've been pushing this thing of lived experience for 5 years, no results. And today is my last day on a global advisory committee where I've had those opportunities to fight. And believe it or not, today I had planned to take my life out of that frustration. The last thing I needed someone to tell me or to tell me right now is religion. Because I am not religious. You understand what I mean? So there's a place of religion. There are several reasons why people, get strength to live, whether it is from religion or finding a sense of purpose outside religion, etc. So yes, religion works for many of us. But listen first. Listen without judgment so that you respond accordingly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Charity, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been quite the engaging conversation, and maybe we needed more hours to continue with this conversation. But to my panelists, I appreciate your time. On my far right, we have, on my far left, I beg your pardon, we have Petronila Mukiando, the Deputy Director and Head of Research at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, followed by Mary Gitau, who's Executive Director, Center for Suicide Research and Intervention. We have Hiram Chomba, who is a suicide prevention researcher, a suicidologist and psychotherapist. And we also have Sheikh Ibrahim Lethome, who touched majorly on religion and mental health. And we have Charity Muturi, who is an advocacy for mental health, a health advocacy and policy champion for decriminalization of suicide. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. Thank you so much for your time and for your contribution. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for all of you who've shared your stories with us today. So after everything is said and done, what is the future of research in this mental health space? And to drive this, I'd like to welcome Bridget Ngana to be the last session for today. Bridget Ngana.
Good afternoon, everyone. Usually they say they save the best for the last. And I just want to thank all of you for keeping up with us since we began in the morning. I am Bridget Ngana, and I will be taking you through a powerful panel that is going to have the best of the best. I'm quite honored to be hosting, and I'll be calling them up right now. Sorry about the sound. First of all, I will be speaking with Professor David Ndetei, the founding director of the Africa Institute of Mental Health and Brain Health, acronymed as AFRIMEB. Please give him a round of applause as he comes to the stage. And Christine Jambi, who is a research scientist in the Department of Mental Health, which I believe is under the Ministry of Health. Please, Christine, welcome to the stage. I will also be speaking with Dr. Kelly Olwoch, the CEO of KMTC. Welcome, Daktari. William Deche Mwachiro, psychologist at Befrienders Kenya. Welcome to the stage. And finally, Nazarene Kiwinga, a psychologist and a counselor from Daystar University. Welcome. Let's give them a round of applause. Now, guys, I know you have been seated after a very sumptuous lunch. Please rise for a minute. And this is with all due respect to all the gender assigned or affirmed identities that we ascribe to. So if you are F and female, and I am she, he, apologies. So for F, if you're F, raise your hand if you're a female. Okay, and for the men in the house, raise your hand. So for the next 1 minute, I'll do, with all due respect also to Sheikh, I will do an exercise. It's a song, and I did it in Sunday school. So if you are F, when we say, I will make you fishers of men. So F, you stand up, M, you sit down. for the next 30 seconds. Let's just try and changamka kiasi. So let's start. I will make you fishers of men. Oh my God. It's a nice one. One last round, one last round. This is the instruction, good people. If you're F, you sit. M, you stand. And when we say M, you sit. Okay, thank you. It's the other way around. Okay, if you're F, you remain standing. Okay? One last time. I will make you fishers of men, fishers of men. A beautiful way to start the session, and thank you very much. You may all have your seats. At least I know I have your attention. Thank you. I believe we all have our mics, my beautiful and handsome panelists. And ideally, we've had a very packed day, navigating the spectrum of mental health in our country, understanding the dynamics, the issues to deal with the challenges that we face in the community, and most importantly, the negative side and the extreme side, and that's the panel that has just concluded. Let's talk about the state of suicide in the country. But I would like to begin this session with acknowledging the presence of Professor Ndetei. He is one of the leading professors in this country from the University of Nairobi, who are also progressive in terms of research on mental health and wellness. And Professor, my first question goes to you. Since you began your work, and I believe you graduated even before I was born, and if you look at the state of mental health research in the country, because right now we've talked about the capacity, we've talked about the inequalities in terms of access to care, but the role of research is very important because research is actually the room that gives birth to these policy decisions that we have right now at the moment. As you sit as the head of the Africa Institute of Mental and Brain Health, even with the work that you've done within the government quarters, what is the state of mental health research in the country right now?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Let me say it is very, we have generated a lot. The question is, what's the state of mental health research in this country? I would say it is very good. In published literature, internationally, comparing our findings with what is available hosted here in the world, we have worked with the top experts in suicidology in the world, and they identified with the research that we did and the similarities, so it's very good. It's not me, it is this thing.
It is on, it is on. You can continue.
I'll just continue.
Yes, or you can start because people didn't get you at the beginning.
I was asked what is the status of the research in this country, and I want to say it is very good compared with, I think the only people we compete with is South Africa for various reasons. And when I say it's very good, it is because the publications are there. At the moment today, I think by tomorrow it will even be bigger.
Professor, please hold the mic close to your mouth. It's fine. Just make sure it's close to your mouth.
I will have 426 scientific publications, and they are growing. I'm just telling you that is happening. The Department of Psychiatry is generating a lot of research. They do that for their dissertations, and so on. Department of Sociology, and so on. We have psychologists in the department who are doing a lot of research. So it is very good. And the data is there. Whoever wants to have access that kind of data. So this, if you allow me, we were talking about innovation, and I want to bring research in that aspect, and say this. Because of research in other countries, and in particular in America, there are very important lessons that we can learn. Let me tell you what data says about mental health in the United States of America. We have all the resources. If you go to Manhattan, that is more highlight. They have more psychiatrists than any other country that I can think of Africa. But listen, when they did the outcomes of all the resources that they put in there, in despite of the resources, it made no difference. The level of suicidality remains the same. And that is research. So what we learn from them, and what we learn from them is very, very, very simple. We must be innovative. We must not follow the Western model as the ideal model. We must develop our own models. And the models that we are talking about is we as Kenyans, how can we be innovative in the kind of research that we do? And I think the most important one is for us to be inclusive. There is nobody who is more important than another when it comes to mental health. The patient, the relatives, the communities, religious leaders, and please allow me to say this, because it's the truth and the data is there to suggest it. Traditional healers. I am not saying we just let them run amok. We engage them positively.
Please hold the mic to
We engage them positively. When you have a person with issues, say the sheikh, when you have somebody with this suicidality or suicide, don't say Nimajin. Don't say that. If you are dealing with a traditional healer, don't say it is witchcraft or something like that. If you engage with them positively, they can make very good contribution. Why am I saying this? Because we have evidence in this country that if you engage them positively, traditional healers, clergy, and other people, they produce results that are as good as results produced by other people. That is a scientific fact. And recently, there was a publication in The Lancet, that's the topmost, of work done in Nigeria. And they show that traditional healers, if you engage them positively and educate them, they are able to treat or to support the treatment of schizophrenia with good results.
Wow, quite interesting. There, Daktari, talking about the nexus between embracing the traditional or cultural elements with science in terms of mental health treatment. I'd like Christine from the Department of Mental Health to talk to us about the evidence or the issue with data. There is this misconception that there is non-existent or coherent data in terms of mental health in this country. I say this because I know currently there is, what is it called? It's like a pilot program that is being done in 15 public health facilities across the country in terms of data collection for mental health. And I think it's being done in collaboration with some other counties at that level. So in terms of data collection, what kind of data do we have that today the Ministry of Health can say on the list of mental illnesses, these are the ones that are affecting a majority of the Kenyan population, and these are the emerging issues that we are also seeing?
Thank you for that question. Good afternoon, everyone. Just want to say that I'm from KEMRI, but mental health, like Professor Ndete said. Even from our local researchers in universities, our professors, and yeah, there's quite a lot of research on that, yes.
Any emerging study that you're working on right now as KEMRI that is relevant to the conversations that we've been having here, maybe that could let the audience know, because usually we only see the impact side, but you as the researchers, you have the opportunity to also predict, and I think that's one of the assets or the importance of this conversation right now. What role will research play in the improvement of access to mental health care in the country?
Yes, so research definitely helps us, create evidence that this works and this doesn't work. Like he had said that we have to create different interventions that are,
able to help our community here in Kenya. And some of the things that we're currently working on is, like in the previous topic, a suicide scoping review, which will help us just collect all the data that we know about suicide here in Kenya, and which can help us create a suicide registry so that we're able to understand the details and the mental health needs. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on to Dr. Kelly from KMTC. You are the ones who are responsible for the training of healthcare workers in the country. And from where you sit, I think, could you give us a picture of how much of the population that you handle across the country is tailor-made for the mental health care in the country?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Kenya Medical Training College right now has 62,807 students. And out of that, those who are doing courses that are directly engaged with mental health are over 1,500. This is also to say that in Kenya Medical Training College, what we've done is approach mental health from primary healthcare perspective. And that means that majority of our curricula right now have encompassed mental health aspects in them. And particularly now that we are focusing on community health promoters, what we've done is to ensure that we embed knowledge about mental health in the curricula at this level, including other primary healthcare facing courses like social work, medical counseling. And what we're trying to do is to incorporate an all faculty approach in terms of knowledge about mental health and how it can be used to promote knowledge in the community to make sure that as a population, we are knowledgeable about mental health. We are able to cite symptoms and signs of mental health early enough in the community, be able to know interventions to take, including referral systems, and be able to take interventions where necessary to support the community. So totally, we look at curricula. We have 95 curricula. So what we're doing right now is have a collaborative effort with like-minded organizations like University of British Columbia to incorporate mental health in most of our community-facing curricula. Thank you.
Maybe before I let you go, there's the issue of the funding. Do you think that there's a bias also in terms of training if we start to talk about the gaps in the capacity of mental health experts in the country? Is it also a gap even from the point of view as a trainer that maybe you will focus on training the huge bulk of your population towards other disciplines and very few you'll gravitate them towards mental health?
The trend we tend to see in KMTC is lack of knowledge of applicants about mental health courses. And most of the time, you find most applicants who get themselves in mental health courses trying to redirect to other courses. But what we've then done is to ensure that we have sufficiently accommodated learners interested in mental health. One way to do that is through collaboration. Right now, we are collaborating with Africa CDC to support learners. We are collaborating with Kamili, which is a community-based organization to support sponsorship of students, to support curricular development, and support development of faculty in mental health. So what we've done is to have an innovative way of collaboration that leads to support of students who are interested in the areas of mental health, to support as many students as possible get into this space. Additionally, we engage with county governments. For example, we have collaborated with county governments like Murang'a, Nyeri, to support community health promoters, learn about mental health and identification of mental health in the community, and be able to promote destigmatization at community level. And that has really worked well, because for now, it's now easy for these community health promoters to identify challenges in mental health at household level and be able to advise on interventions, including referral systems.
Thank you so much. Nazreen, you have been a counseling psychologist. Maybe you will tell the audience how long you have been working, but I want to understand post the pandemic, because I believe the COVID-19 pandemic was more of a blessing in disguise, because for once, the world woke up to the reality that there is no health without mental health. So what are some of the innovations that you've seen in your experience that are moving forward the wheels towards creating more awareness and also encouraging better access to quality mental health care?
Thank you very much for that question. Allow me to correct something there. I am a clinical psychologist. However, that's neither here nor there. But
please help us with the sound. If you can swap the mic.
okay. So post-COVID, I've been in this practice for a little about a decade now. And post-COVID, before COVID, we had to do face-to-face therapy. You had to come to the therapy room, and then the world stopped, and we couldn't speak to each other face-to-face because you were a threat to me, and I was a threat to you. And so, of course, came in online counseling, online therapy opportunities. In addition to that, came in the ability to collect data online for those that are doing the research, because we couldn't go to hospitals, we couldn't go to communities to collect data. So therefore, we were able now to collect data online. Of course, there is a lot of limitations with regards to that, and you know, there's still a lot of learning that is going on in that space. However, COVID was a blessing in disguise, because we were taught as human race that we can stretch ourselves to more than we thought we could. And therefore, we have been able to see what else can be done. We can do therapy. I can have clients in Australia, in London, and I can do therapy at 1 a.m. in the morning with a client in Russia. So long as we are able to communicate with on the same language, and we're able to develop rapport across the internet. So there is a lot of learning also in that space that's taking place, but however, this has moved therapy and counseling and research in the space of psychology much further. There's still a lot of research surrounding the efficacy of online therapy, but from where I see it, and having had clients in that space where I am able to do online therapy, of course with adults, doesn't work so well with children and sometimes the adolescents. There's still a lot of research around the efficacy of online therapy, but from what it appears to be, there is actual improvements in symptomatology with clients, even as we work in those spaces. So post-COVID, we have benefited from the ability to work remotely and to collect data remotely.
Wow. William, from your experience as well, you could tell us, what are these digital solutions that you have seen that have been made accessible now to advance the quality and also the access to mental health and wellness?
Thank you. Thank you very much. There are a lot, actually. There could be a possibility on where we could view application use in our mobile phones to access therapy materials for the purpose of psychoeducation. Now, as we need to understand first, in healing or in getting better, first you need to be aware, first you need to learn. Therefore, the fact that these materials are there, these vast materials are there, we can get a step ahead to getting a bit better. There's also an aspect of teletherapy on where you don't have to now walk physically to your counselor. You can have a good conversation with your counselor via phone, via online Zoom sessions. It's so open. It's the venue that technology has created is so vast for both the client and the counselor to have a healthy and a more progressive way of healing and getting better. We could also look at the aspect of AI. There are AI-generated counselors. I'm quite sure we've probably bumped on them online, and maybe we've had slight conversations, but we're like, nah, it's weird, you know. A normal feeling, rightfully so, because we are best interacting with the whole idea of a physical being. Interpersonal communication is based on I talking to the good doctor, rather than I talking to a machine. It gives you the feel of a sequel to a Terminator movie. So it's highly understood. There is also the fact that stress management has been something that technology has worked on. Wearable devices like watches to measure or track stresses that an individual is going through or is probably about to go through. These are humongous actually, not huge, humongous steps that have really helped in progression of therapy within the technological space. I think I'd like to mention one more, you know, specifically with the aspect of social media. And one specific place I talk about is TikTok. Many individuals who have interacted with the majority of videos there have gotten to meet professionals who talk about, you know, the whole aspect of therapy. Many people have been able to open up and normalize, you know, mental health issues without, you know, pulling back and without fear of stigmatization. So I'm guessing that's a huge step ahead. Something that I'm quite sure way back then wasn't quite applicable as we speak.
Thank you. True. And I'd like to shoot a follow-up question on that to Professor Ndete, because you're talking about the advent of technology, artificial intelligence in data collection, in research, and also in the development and forecasting of mental health care. So from where you sit, you had talked passionately about the marrying of science and cultural beliefs and embracing that in terms of mental health care. So what is the role, or where do you see the role of artificial intelligence in terms of mental health care?
Yeah, it's got a place, but before we do that, and this one area.
Please put the mic to your mouth, close to your mouth.
I thought I speak loudly. This one area where I agree with Atoli. We do not publish negative results. Negative, nobody is going to touch that. But let me tell you, we have been having problems. I don't know how other people manage this, in using online platform as a way of data collection. Most of the time it is bluffs. It's not in Kenya, only in Kenya, it's in India, it's all over the place. And quite often we may not get the proper data. The response rate is very low. So we must be very careful with this new facility. Maybe you have a different way of doing this, but most people have found it not very effective. I think we should publish. To get back to what you are saying, artificial intelligence, I think there is a place for it. We have just been encouraged to publish our data using Columbia Suicide Scale, which, using this instrument, we were able to go to the next step. It's like I have a suicidal, I want to commit suicide. And this is the attempt. I reached a stage where I am almost touching the attempt. Okay? And we are reaching that point. It is true, we don't want to go back to what we said. It is true, there's a lot of research that tells us that, as a matter of fact, if you do ABCD, if you look at this, if you tell people this, you can actually prevent suicide. Because they are predictive factors, they are there, they are very well known. The environment, not necessarily to do with the level of depression, many things which can be tackled. But to come more specifically to you, is that there are instruments which we can put on certain platforms. And if they genuinely, in their own time, they go through that slowly with guidelines on how to respond, we can make tremendous response. But you must be very careful. I don't think we have reached there yet, because it must be based on evidence. I keep on saying evidence that will work. Otherwise, if you put things into those platforms, they are not evidence-based, you are likely to cause more problems. So that's my response.
Okay, in more of a double-edged sword, I'll come to you, Nazreen. When you look at the opportunities that the technology has provided, you've said you can have clients in any continent and still meet them at their point of need. Social media, and everyone in this room, I believe, has a social media platform, has in one way been seen as a contributor to ill mental health. And the issue of regulation is something that is neither here nor there when it comes to the digital space. So from where you sit, what role do you as mental health experts have in the regulation of social media when it is adverse to the mental health and wellness of the users? And this is a population of the young people that we're talking about.
Regulating the social media?
Yes.
The president cannot even do it.
Interesting
No,
question.
you have a role. You can do something about it. You have a say.
What I can do, and we have our social media expert here, is to give them evidence-based information, and then they can put that information. But go and talk to the media. Tell them, don't do this. Start causing confrontation with them. I was talking to him over lunchtime. The best thing is just to leave them alone. Let them say whatever they want to say.
Yes, I agree with the good professor. But just before I respond to that, I'd like to touch a little bit on what Professor was saying. Researchers, we must produce our results as they are. We are bound by the duty of fairness and justice. However, we don't want to produce negative results because we don't want to look like we didn't do that, whatever we need to have done. And so therefore that stands then the gap of how efficacious is data collection in this way or that way, or even therapy in that space. So there is still a lot of growth that needs to happen. We are just 4 years post-COVID, so we have a lot of growth to do, and we also have a lot of ethics that we need to observe as researchers. However, social media spaces, every mental health professional has a responsibility to give evidence-based information that is useful and helpful, whether it is a line a day, a paragraph a day, or a story a day. However, in this space, people can be quite confrontational. So you need to be quite well balanced as a mental health professional in order to not get into rebuttals with the people that are in that space. So you need to speak what you know to be true, to be evidence-based, offer it to the reader or to the listener, and it will benefit whomsoever it will benefit. But with regards to regulation and determining who should watch, what they should, I'm sure, as Professor said, even the government can't do that. We're in a capitalist system, so to each his own. We must choose as we should.
But I've seen lobbying. Lobbying can be done, and
absolutely, I agree with you.
Some progress, especially in terms of the regulation of some apps, in terms of how they affect people's mental health. Christine, you are in research. Maybe in terms of the space here locally, have you seen progressive applications or innovations that are targeted towards improving access and the quality of mental health care in the country, even as KEMRI? Who are you working with? Who are you partnering with to just see local innovation progressing and creating more awareness about mental health?
Okay, so we are collaborating and working with various stakeholders, including AKU, when it comes to increasing access to mental health care. Yeah, so that includes, training community-based workers, like the Ministry of Health had addressed, as well as there are also many different ways we can choose to increase access. As you know, in the report that was done by the Communications Authority of Kenya, they said that there are about 63.9 million mobile subscribers. And with that, we can be able to even reach out to those people, whether it's through creating awareness. Let's say if they decided to post something on one of the social media platforms and said, hey, if you decide to post more about mental health, like hashtag Mental Health Awareness Month, you'll get some free airtime. And with that, maybe even that can increase awareness and promotion. Yes.
That's incentivizing the awareness creation.
Yeah.
Now, William, I heard you talk passionately about the advancements, artificial intelligence and TikTok being another substitute to a therapist, but the human contact, where does this all lie when we look at the future of mental health in a very technologically advanced world? Because right now, yes, I can go to ChatGPT and key in what I'm feeling, and it will give me some feedback. So how will that also maybe act for the progression of equity towards mental access, healthcare access, and how will it also act against it in terms of now dissolving the hard-earned money and experience that has been put into having the likes of Professor Ndetei here, the likes of Nazreen and yourself, and everyone here who has gone to school to invest, who has gone to school to be who they are on this panel?
I feel, first of all, that the huge comparison between AI and physical interaction is mostly based on a key aspect of empathy. Now, one would ask, empathy in what way? I mean, AI can simply type, oh, sorry for what you're feeling. I can't imagine your experience. However, if you compare that with physical conversation, I'm a human, you're a human being, and that sense of expression based on simply existence is quite deep and compassionate when it comes to a conversation. Because have you ever imagined the idea of simply existence as being empathetic when conversation in therapy is involved? Because there's relatability there. I know you can feel some things even though we are not experiencing the same thing, but I know you have felt pain before. I know you have felt some sort of things. Now, that's where I personally feel we beat the whole idea of the AI. However, as much as it's progressing, who knows, as time progresses, things might grow and different ideologies might come into place. But I feel the traditional idea of physical therapy still stands tall at the end of the day. Now, whenever it comes to putting work at risk, progression or the idea of civilization comes with advancements that are constant in a daily basis. One or the other, we might need individuals to key in therapy-based techniques, because I'm quite sure they're not done. We are using techniques that were recently used and created by previous psychologists and psychotherapists and so on, but with young, fresh minds. I do believe there could be a proceeding of vast therapeutic ideas for the sole purpose of progression. So that puts the question, will we really be disposed or will we still work in an interdependent sway of things?
Mhm.
Yes.
And maybe I just want to give 30 seconds to all the panelists because we are winding up. And my question to you, as we wind up, what is your ideal scenario in terms of the future of mental health in the technology era? And yeah, what is your ideal scenario? These are 30-second recommendations because we are winding up. We are really pressed on time. But Professor, you could go ahead.
Very good. And I'll tell you why it's very good. During my
Please hold the mic close
and
to your mouth.
during my inaugural lecture, I said, and asked them it is there, I said, as far as mental health is concerned, we were just crossing the Jordan River. And the following day, we would cross the Jordan River. And we will have walked to the promise, which is mental health for all. Next 10 years, or even before, we'll be there.
Wow, powerful.
My idea about the future of mental health and technology is that we are still in the kindergarten of research when it comes to interaction between mental health and technology. And where we are right now, what needs to be done is to create an environment for learning, for research, and encourage publication even if they are negative. Encourage publication that are objective rather than looking at the positive elements only in research. And for us as KMTC, and I think some of my students are here, we encourage collaborative learning. For example, right now, we are collaborating with University of British Columbia, and some of their students come to learn at Kenya Medical Training College. And we have classes together with them, where our students co-learn with students from various jurisdictions, so that we create information and knowledge that is vast, that transverses the context of country and space. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazreen. You could give your...
I think from me, it is a call to institutions to open themselves up for data collection. Schools, hospitals, to avail data collection for students, for university undergraduates, masters, and PhD students, to be able to collect data easily. And when that is done with proper mentorship, we shall be able to have prevalence data, we shall be able to have intervention data, and what we are hearing here of lack of data, I mean, we have the people to collect the data. The institutions, the government, the ministry needs to open itself up so that this data is available for use for this nation, because this nation is for the people. The data is with the people.
Christine?
Can you repeat the question again?
Your final recommendation, what is the future of mental health research in the face of technology? Just give out your final recommendation or your final remarks.
In terms of mental health research, I see a future where it will be more community-based data collection in terms of even creating data in evidence-based interventions whereby everybody is able to understand what they're collecting, as well as to be able to even mold their interventions that they want in terms of mental health. Yes.
Finally, William, could close this for us.
I'd focus mostly on the idea of evidence-based intervention. That will come through quick and hard research especially when it comes to the collaboration of technology with therapy, interventions like exposure therapy. We might have different ideas of approaching that. Who knows, as the time progresses and as research progresses, there might be a spontaneous flow of different interventions as time goes by. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause to my panelists. I think we have scratched the surface of mental health in this era of the digital innovation. And so I'd like to thank you all for being wonderful panelists. And I just want to clap for you again as we rise up and proceed to our seats.
We mmesurvive siku mzima. Do you feel educated? Do you feel connected? Have you learned something? So as we wind up this session, as we wind up this day, again, I'd like you to just take a moment to reflect on all that you've had today, all the personal stories that have been shared, and all the expertise that has been shared. And once again, if you need to talk to someone or you need help, you can find help from the people within this room. And Sheikh Lithome there was upset that we didn't recognize the help that religious leaders can provide. So if you need religious help, he can be able to assist with that. And if you drove here, just one more time, if you drove here, there's a ticket you got when you're coming in. You need a second ticket that you'll get from a security officer out here. And when you drive out, scan the first ticket. It will tell you how much money you need to pay. And then you scan the second ticket to cancel that amount because your parking today is free. And lastly, please, the QR code you saw on your screen, share with us your thoughts. How you think we can improve this conversation, how we can create a safe space for all of us in this mental wellness, how we can keep engaging and connecting, and then we will sample some of your comments. And to wrap this up, to bring this all to a close, I'd like to invite Bernard Mwinzi for a vote of thanks on behalf of the Nation Media Group.
Wow, time flies, doesn't it? Can you believe that we've been here since morning? I've held many forums like this one before, many. I was just thinking as I was seated there, when we first conceptualized this idea, what we thought it would look like, and what we thought the outcomes would be based on the conversations that we have today. And I can assure you, never did we imagine the kind of impact this debate we've had today, these day-long conversations. We never imagined that they would be at that level. I believe, I'm 100% sure today that we've touched lives. People in this room, we've been live on NTV, and we've been live on our social media platforms. And I'm 100% sure that we've touched lives in ways that we can't imagine. And I can only thank you. Thank you for being such a great, great team, such a great audience, such a great team of panels. It's been wonderful. We should clap ourselves for that, I think. As a journalist, I cover a lot of things. I've covered disaster, we've covered health, covered politics, covered crime. We've covered climate summits all over the world. But I think the personal tales today, for me, were the most impactful. So that journalism for me now, and the kind of events that we've been doing now, are moving away from, talking about abstract things at the policy level to people saying, this is me, and this is what I'm feeling, this is what I feel. So I'm not just a statistic. I'm not just 1 in 4. It is me. So the things that you're talking about affect me. I have gone through this. I feel it. I can relate. And I think that to me is very, very important because it now forces us, particularly us as media, to realize that the stories that we churn out are not just stories. They are the daily lived experiences of hundreds of thousands of people in this country who go through this every day and hard. And it is our responsibility to give them that voice. So as the media, I am 100% sure that we have a challenge upon us, but I'm also 100% sure that as the Nation Media Group, we are up to that task. And we'll do it. We'll keep coming back to you. We'll keep having these conversations, organizing these forums, because alone, we can't do it. We can't do it. You can imagine the wealth of information, the treasure trove of information that Professor Ndetei has. Where else do I get him? Where else do I get Professor Atwoli? Where do I get the clinical psychologists that we've been interacting with today? Where do I get them? I haven't gone to school to study the things that we've been discussing here. I can only mediate them. And when I'm given that opportunity, I think that to me becomes very, very powerful. We imagined that this day will end up with us coming up with the common understanding that mental health is our responsibility at the individual level. It's not even at the community level, at the personal individual level. And there are so many interrelationships that we sometimes forget that even as individuals, at the family level, at the social level, in schools, in our workplaces, in church, in mosques, in all these places, we are all interconnected. Zainab asked me to give a vote of thanks, and this is my way of saying thank you very much to you, members of this audience, who have been very, very crucial in ensuring that this day is very, very successful. I also want to thank our partners. We couldn't have done this alone. I know you know that this is an expensive place. Airtime is expensive, food is expensive, so we are happy that we had people who came on board to support us in this. They include PACJA, they include Professor Ndetei's AfriMed, the Nairobi Hospital itself, KCPA, the Lions Sight First Eye Hospital, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who have worked with us for a very long time, as well as the Eldoret Hospital. Without you, this would not have been possible, and we appreciate the fact that you have faith in us to deliver on the mandate that we said we'll deliver. Asanteni sana, and let's clap for them. Lastly, I want to say this, that this is not just a conversation. It's not just a talk shop. This is something that we take seriously because it gives us learnings about what society feels about the programs that we run. We use these forums as learning, teaching aids for us in the newsroom. We produce reports from this that impact our editorial approaches to everything that we do. So I can assure you, for instance, that our approach to mental health reporting is going to change because there are so many things that we've learned today. I've spent just a few minutes here talking to somebody who was critical of some of the things that we said or did not do here, and she was offering us guidance on what we need to do. Why? Because she's an expert in that space and she understands things that we as media professionals do not understand. So we approach this from that analysis of our own inadequacies and knowing that we are not perfect in what we do. There is so much that has been said today. We've had great government representation. I'm sure even as editors and reporters, we'll keep engaging with the government on the issues that have been raised today and asking the hard questions on your behalf. But most importantly, we want to assure you that as a media organization, we will keep telling your story as it should be done. Asanteni sana, and have a great evening.